పడతావెందుకో, జీవించటంలో ఉన్న మొదిరిమ తెలుసుకోలేదెందుకో. శిలా నీవే, శిల్పి నీవే, శిల్పం నీవే సృష్టిలో. ఓ పాడు పండు వెన్నెల నిండు పున్నమి సంధి వెలుగుల ఇంద్రధనసులు. పండు వెన్నెల నిండు పున్నమి సంధి వెలుగుల ఇంద్రధనసులు. సూర్య చంద్రుల కాంతిదారలు విశ్వమున విరబూసే తారలు. పుడమి ఎంత గొప్పదో మన పుట్టుకెంత భాగ్యమో. పుడమి ఎంత గొప్పదో మన పుట్టుకంత భాగ్యమో. పుడమి ఎంత పుణ్యమో పుట్టుకంత భాగ్యమో. శిలా నీవి, శిల్పి నీవి, శిల్పం నీవి సృష్టిలో. కొండ కోనలు వాగు వంకలు జంట గోవల గుంటు తేనెలు. కొండ కోనలు వాగు వంకలు జంట గోవల జుంటు తేనెలు. రామచిలుకలు గోరు వంకలు కోయలల కోరంగు ఆటలు. అవని తనివి తీరదు తనువు చాలదు జీవితంపై ఆశ చడలదు. తనివి తీరదు తనువు చాలదు జీవితంపై ఆశ చడలదు. తనివి తీరదు తనువు చాలదు జీవితంపై ఆశ చడలదు. శిలా నీవి, శిల్పి నీవి, శిల్పం నీవి సృష్టిలో. వెలుగులను వెంటాడు చీకటి, చీకటిని చండాడి వెలుగులు. వెలుగులను వెంటాడి చీకటి, చీకటిని చండాడి వెలుగులు. పగలు రాత్రి, రాత్రి పగలు, జనన మరణం, మరణ జననం. క్షణము క్షణం మధురము, క్షణము క్షణముక మధుర గానం. జీవితం చిగురాకు తరుణం. క్షణము క్షణం మధుర గానం. జీవితం సిగురాకు తరుణం. క్షణము క్షణం ఒక మధుర గానం. జీవితం సిగురాకు తరుణం. శిలా నీవి, శిల్పి నీవి, శిల్పం నీవి సృష్టిలో. నీటిలో మన జన్మ ఉన్నది, నిప్పులో చైతన్యమున్నది. నీటిలో మన జన్మ ఉన్నది, నిప్పులో చైతన్యమున్నది. గాలిలో మకరందమున్నది, భూమిపైనే జీవమున్నది. అమ్మతనమే అంతరాత్మగా సాగిపోతుంది ధరణి. అమ్మతనమే అంతరాత్మగా సాగిపోతుంది ధరణి. సృష్టికి కాలచక్రం ఆగిపోనిది. కాలముకు వెల కట్టగలమా, కాలమును భయపెట్టగలమా. కాలమును దాసి పెడితే దాగి ఉంటుందా. కాలమన్నది దాసి పెడితే దాగి ఉంటుందా. కాలగమనం తెలియకుండా ఫలితముంటుందా. శిలా నీవే, శిల్పి నీవే, శిల్పం నీవే సృష్టిలో. దేవుడిని చేసింది నీవు, దైవముగా కొలిసింది నీవు. దేవుడిని చేసింది నీవు, దైవముగా కొలిసింది నీవు. మతములను సృష్టించి జనులు మతములను మార్చింది నీవు. మతములను సృష్టించి జనులు మతములను మార్చింది నీవు. మానవత్వమే మనిషికి మమత కావాలో. మనుషులంతా ఒక్కటని మహిమ తెలపాలో. శిలా నీవే, శిల్పి నీవే, శిల్పం నువ్వే సృష్టిలో. కులములన్నీయు కూలిపోవును, మతములన్నీయు మాసిపోవును. కులములన్నీయు కూలిపోవును, మతములన్నీ మాసిపోవును. జ్ఞానమొక్కటి మిగిలిపోవు, త్యాగమొక్కటి నిలిసిపోవును. జ్ఞానమొక్కటి మిగిలిపోవు, త్యాగమొక్కటి నిలిసిపోవును. జ్ఞానమే విశ్వాంతరాలను దాటిపోస్తుంది. జ్ఞానమే విశ్వాంతరాలను దాటి వస్తుంది. త్యాగమే నీ చరితను తిరగరాస్తుందో. శిలా నీవే, శిల్పి నీవే, శిల్పం నువ్వే సృష్టిలో. కన్ను మిన్ను ఎరగకుండా కండ కావరమొచ్చినా, కన్ను మిన్ను ఎరగకుండా కండ కావరమొచ్చినా, అదుపు తప్పి మదుపు తప్పి ఆస్తిపాస్తులు పెరిగినా, అదుపు తప్పి మదుపు తప్పి ఆస్తిపాస్తులు పెరిగినా, అంగబలము అర్ధబలము అధికార బలముతో ఊగినా, అంగబలము అర్ధబలము అధికార బలముతో ఊగినా, మానవత్వం విడిచినంక మనిషికి విలువేమి ఉండదు. శిలా నీవే, శిల్పి నీవే, శిల్పం నీవే సృష్టిలో.
గోదావరి తరంగాల ఘోషలో తూర్పు కనుమ కొండల మారు మ్రోతలు విన్నాము విన్నాము నీ అమరగాథ, మన్య విప్లవాల సమరగాథ, మన్య విప్లవాల సమరగాథ. గోదావరి తరంగాల ఘోషలో తూర్పు కనుమ కొండల మారు మ్రోతలు విన్నాము నీ అమరగాథ, ఆ మన్య విప్లవాల సమరగాథ, ఆ మన్య విప్లవాల సమరగాథ. రామరాజా అల్లూరి సీతారామరాజా, రామరాజా అల్లూరి సీతారామరాజా. తెల్లవాడు తల్లడిల్ల రగిలించినావు, తెలుగువాని తిరుగుబాటు శౌర్య తేజము. తెల్లవాడు తల్లడిల్ల రగిలించినావు, తెలుగువాని తిరుగుబాటు శౌర్య తేజము. త్యాగాగ్ని భస్మమాయే పరపాలన నరకం, త్యాగాగ్ని భస్మమాయే పరపాలన నరకం. అయినా నీ కలలింకా మిగిలిపోయే కలగా. రామరాజా అల్లూరి సీతారామరాజా, రామరాజా అల్లూరి సీతారామరాజా. చైతన్య స్ఫూర్తితో మాకిచ్చిన కొత్త బలం, చైతన్య స్ఫూర్తితో మాకిచ్చిన కొత్త బలం. అన్యాయం అవినీతి అంతమయ్యే కొదలం, అన్యాయం అవినీతి అంతమయ్యే కొదలం. శ్రామిక వర్గం ముక్తిని సాధించిన నాడే, శ్రామిక వర్గం ముక్తిని సాధించిన నాడే సకల దళిత జాతుల సౌభాగ్యం సంభవం. రామరాజా అల్లూరి సీతారామరాజా, రామరాజా అల్లూరి సీతారామరాజా. గోదావరి తరంగాల ఘోషలో, తూర్పు కనుమ కొండల మారు మ్రోతలు, విన్నాము నీ అమరగాథ, ఆ మన్య విప్లవాల సమరగాథ, ఆ మన్య విప్లవాల సమరగాథ. రామరాజా అల్లూరి సీతారామరాజా, రామరాజా అల్లూరి సీతారామరాజా.
స్టార్ట్
చేసాం.
వెరీ గుడ్ ఈవినింగ్ అండ్ అందరికీ స్వాగతం అండి. ఈరోజు జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక ఆధ్వర్యంలో జరుగుతున్న డీకోడింగ్ ద ఫ్యూచర్ JVV ఆర్గనైజ్ చేస్తున్న డీకోడింగ్ ద ఫ్యూచర్ క్వాంటమ్ సైన్స్ టెక్నాలజీ అండ్ క్వాంటమ్ వ్యాలీస్ గురించి చాలా చర్చ జరుగుతుంది. అంటే న్యూస్ పేపర్స్లో ఉండొచ్చు, లేదంటే క్వాంటమ్ టెక్నాలజీ మీద ఫ్యూచర్ ఆఫ్ టెక్నాలజీ అని, దీనికి స్కోప్ ఏంటి, రకరకాల వాటి మీద ఎప్పుడూ చర్చ జరుగుతుంది ఫ్యూచరిస్టిక్ టెక్నాలజీస్లో. అయితే దీని గురించి ఈరోజు ఒక సెమినార్ పెట్టుకొని అసలు క్వాంటమ్ టెక్నాలజీ ఎలా పనిచేస్తుంది, దాన్ని సెటప్ చేయడానికి దానికి కావాల్సిన నిపుణులు లేదంటే సాంకేతికత ఇవన్నీ ఎలా ఉంటాయి అనే దాని మీద ఈరోజు సెమినార్ జరగబోతుంది. దాని వాస్తవాలు వీటి గురించి కూడా అందరూ తెలుసుకోవచ్చు. సో వచ్చిన ఫ్యాకల్టీ మెంబర్స్, ఇంటలెక్చువల్స్, స్టూడెంట్స్ అందరికీ స్వాగతం. ఈరోజు స్టార్ట్ చేద్దాం. ముందుగా మురళీధర్ గారిని ఇన్వైట్ చేస్తున్నాను. మురళీధర్ గారు స్టేట్ మెంబర్ జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక. వెల్కమ్ సార్. నెక్స్ట్ రామారావు గారు జనరల్ సెక్రటరీ జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదికని ఇన్వైట్ చేస్తున్నాను సార్. So now the honorable speaker Prabir Purkhayastha. సో ప్రబీర్ పుర్ఖాయస్థ గారి పరిచయం చాలామందికి తెలిసిందే. తెలియని వాళ్ళకి చెప్పాలి అంటే ఆయన ఒక ఇంజనీర్, సైంటిస్ట్, ఆథర్ అయి ఉండొచ్చు, స్పీకర్ అయి ఉండొచ్చు. చాలా డొమైన్స్లో ఆయన పనిచేశారు. నాకు కూడా ఎప్పటి నుంచి ఆయనతో అసోసియేషన్ ఉంది. ఆయన ఫౌండర్ మెంబర్. సో ఆయన డెసిగ్నేషన్ చూస్తే ఆయన ఫౌండర్ మెంబర్ ఆల్ ఇండియా పీపుల్ సైన్స్ నెట్వర్క్, ఢిల్లీ సైన్స్ ఫోరంలో భాగంగా పనిచేస్తున్నారు. దానికి అదొక్కటే కాదు, మనకి క్లోజ్గా తెలియాలి అంటే VTPS నారాయణ తాతారావు థర్మల్ పవర్ స్టేషన్కి ఎలక్ట్రానిక్ ప్యానెల్ సెటప్లో ఆయన చీఫ్ ఇంజనీర్గా అక్కడ పనిచేశారు. దాని సెటప్ ఈ రోజుకి అది పనిచేస్తున్న తీరు వీటన్నిటిలో ఆయన ఇన్సెప్షన్లో, అంటే ఆ ప్రాజెక్ట్ స్టార్ట్ అయిన దశలో ఆయన ఇంజనీర్గా ఇక్కడ పనిచేశారు. ఇదొక్కటే కాదు, ఆయన ఎన్నో బుక్స్ రాశారు, రకరకాల సబ్జెక్ట్ ఎక్స్పర్ట్గా పనిచేశారు. సో వాట్ నాట్ ఈరోజు సెషన్లో తెలుసుకుంటారు మీరు ఆయన ఎక్స్పర్టీస్ గురించి. సో బిఫోర్ వితౌట్ ఎనీ డిలే విల్ స్టార్ట్ ద సెషన్. సో మీరు ముందుగా మాట్లాడాల్సిందిగా మురళీధర్ గారిని పిలుస్తాను.
అందరికీ నమస్కారం.
ఈ సెమినార్కి ఆహ్వానం పలుకుతున్నాం. మీ అందరికీ కూడా ధన్యవాదాలు. ఈ సెమినార్కి మీ విలువైన సమయాన్ని ఈ సెమినార్ కోసం వెచ్చిస్తున్నందుకు. జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక మీలో కొంతమందికి తెలుసు, కొంతమంది తెలీదు. వాళ్ళ కోసం చిన్న ఇంట్రడక్షన్. జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక 88 ఫిబ్రవరి 28వ తేదీ సైన్స్ డే రోజు మన రాష్ట్రంలో స్థాపించాం. స్థాపక జనరల్ సెక్రటరీ లక్ష్మణ్ రెడ్డి గారు వస్తున్నారు లోపలికి. వెల్కమ్ సార్. 37 ఏళ్ళుగా జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక ప్రధానంగా 5 అంశాలపైన పనిచేస్తుంది. ఇది సైన్స్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్, వాలంటరీ ఆర్గనైజేషన్. ప్రధానంగా విద్య, వైద్యం, పర్యావరణం, మహిళా సాధికారిత, సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్మెంట్. మన రాజ్యాంగంలో ఆర్టికల్ 51AH ఏ బాధ్యత అయితే ప్రతి పౌరుడికి విధించిందో ఆ సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్మెంట్ని కలిగి ఉండాలని, హ్యుమానిటీ కలిగి ఉండాలని, సంస్కరణ అభిలాష ఉండాలని, ఇవి ప్రధానమైన లక్ష్యంగా సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ప్రధానం ఇందులో. అలాగే ఈరోజు విద్య, వైద్యం, పర్యావరణం విషయాలు చూసుకుంటే, విద్య మనం భారతదేశంలో విద్య ఎంత వెనకబడి ఉంది, లేకపోతే ఎక్కడి నుండి ఎక్కడికి వచ్చాము మీ అందరికీ కొంత తెలుసు. విద్యా వ్యాప్తికి సంబంధించి లిటరసీ యాక్టివిటీలో జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక లక్షలాది మంది కార్యకర్తలు, నాయకులు పాల్గొన్నారు. దాంతో కనీసం 10-15% కొత్తగా లిటరేట్స్ ఆ పీరియడ్లో అయ్యారు 90స్లో. అలాగే వైద్యానికి సంబంధించి మొదట్లో జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక స్థాపక నాయకుల్లో ఎక్కువ మంది వైద్యులే. వైద్య రంగంలో ఇప్పటికీ ఒక 2 భారతదేశాలు మనం చూస్తున్నాం. ఏ వైద్యం అందుబాటులో లేక మూఢనమ్మకాల నుండి, లేకపోతే తక్కువ ఖర్చుతో అయ్యే తాయెత్తులతో మొదలుపెట్టి లోకల్గా సంచి వేసుకు తిరిగే ఆర్ఎంపీలు, పిఎంపీల వైద్యంతో తృప్తిపడి ఉండే ఒక పెద్ద జనాభా ఉంది. అత్యాధునిక సౌకర్యాలు, అవకాశాలు ఉన్న పెద్ద చిన్న సెక్షన్ ప్రజలు కూడా ఉన్నారు. కరోనా లాంటి మహమ్మారి వస్తే లక్షలాది మంది ప్రజలు ఎలా చనిపోయారు, అన్ని వయసుల వాళ్ళు, ధనిక భేద తేడా లేకుండా చనిపోయారు చూసాం మనం. వ్యాక్సిన్ కనిపెట్టిన తర్వాతనే మనం మృత్యువుల్ని ఆపగలిగాం. పర్యావరణం ఈరోజు అత్యంత ప్రాధాన్యత గల అంశంగా మారింది. గతం కంటే ఇప్పుడు పర్యావరణానికి సంబంధించిన విపత్తులు, పెద్ద పెద్ద నగరాలు నీటిమయమైపోవడం చూస్తున్నాం, హైదరాబాద్తో సహా. సంవత్సరం పాటు కురవాల్సిన వర్షం ఒక్క రోజులో కురవడం, అనేక నెలలు అసలు ఒక్క చుక్క నీళ్ళు లేని పరిస్థితి. వ్యవసాయానికి ప్రధానంగా వ్యవసాయం వర్షం మీద ఆధారపడే రైతులు చాలా ఇబ్బంది పడుతున్నారు. భవిష్యత్తులో ఆహార భద్రతకే ప్రమాదం వచ్చే పరిస్థితి. సముద్ర నీటి మట్టం కొంచెం కొంచెంగా పెరుగుతూ ఉండడం, లోతట్టు సముద్ర తీర ప్రాంతాలు భవిష్యత్తులో మునిగిపోయే ప్రమాదం. ఈ మధ్య ఒక చిన్న దేశంలో చిన్న దీవి ఖాళీ చేయాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంది అని చెప్పేసి మనం గమనించాం, న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ రెగ్యులర్గా ఫాలో అయ్యేవాళ్ళు. అలాగే సగటు టెంపరేచరు కొంచెం పెరుగుతూ ఉంటే భవిష్యత్తులో మనం సామాన్య పరిస్థితులు భరించలేని టెంపరేచర్కి వెళ్తే దాని వినాశనం కూడా మనం భవిష్యత్తులో చూస్తాం. ప్రపంచ దేశాలు గమనించిన, ప్రధానంగా అమెరికా లాంటి దేశాలు అధ్యక్షులు అసలు పర్యావరణం ఒక సమస్యే కాదని తీసిపారేసే పరిస్థితి చూస్తున్నాం. అలాగే మహిళలకు సంబంధించి మహిళా సాధికారిత, మనం చట్టాలు ఎన్నున్నా ఈ రోజుకి మహిళల్ని సమానంగా చూడలేకపోవడం అన్నది మహిళల్ని అడిగితే చెప్తారు. ప్రధానంగా నిర్ణయాలు తీసుకునే చట్టసభల్లో ఈ రోజుకి వాళ్ళ ప్రాతినిధ్యం చాలా తక్కువ, 15-20% కంటే లేదు. అలాగే అనార్గనైజ్ సెక్టర్లో వేతనాల్లో ఆడ కూలీకింత, మగ కూలీకింత అని ఇంచుమించుగా సగం ఉండే పరిస్థితి మనం చూస్తున్నాం. పిల్లలకి తిండి పెట్టే విషయంలో, చదువు చెప్పే విషయంలో, బయటకు పంపించే విషయంలో ఆడవాళ్ళకి మగవాళ్ళకి తేడాను కూడా మనం చూస్తున్నాం. ఇది కాకుండా అత్యాచారాలు చిన్న పిల్లల నుండి 60 ఏళ్ళ ముసలి వాళ్ళ మీద వరకు కూడా ఎక్కడో ఒక చోట రికార్డ్ అవుతున్న సందర్భాలు మనం చూస్తున్నాం. కాబట్టి మనసా వాచ అంటారే అలాగా చట్టంలో ఉన్నది నిజంగా అమలు చేసి మహిళలందరూ సమానమే, అన్ని విషయాల్లో కూడా మేము సమంగా చూస్తాము అనే పరిస్థితి రావటానికి ఇంకా చాలా దూరంలో ఉన్నాం. ఆఖరిది సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్మెంట్ ముఖ్యమైనది కూడా మన దేశంలో. ఈ విషయంలో మనం చదువు అది సైన్స్ నేర్చుకుంటున్నాం, మంచి మార్కులు 100కి 100 వస్తున్నాయి, మంచి ఉద్యోగాలు సంపాదించుకుంటున్నాం. ఆచరణకు వచ్చేసరికి చదువు ఏం చెప్పిందో అది కాకుండా వేరే పద్ధతి పాటిస్తున్నాం. ఇస్రో లాంటి సంస్థల్లో కూడా చిన్నపాటి తేడా వచ్చిన ఉపగ్రహాలు అంతరిక్షంలో కాకుండా సముద్రంలో అంత ప్రెషన్ ఉండాల్సిన చోట శాస్త్రవేత్తల తాలూకా కృషి ప్రపంచంలోనే మన ఇస్రోకి మంచి రేటింగ్ ఉన్న పరిస్థితుల్లో కూడా ఇప్పుడు ఉపగ్రహాలు ఆకాశంలోకి వెళ్ళే ముందు లోకల్గా ఉండే చంగాలమ్మ గుడికి దగ్గరలో ఉన్న తిరుపతి గుడికి వెళ్ళి పూజ చేసి ఆ తర్వాత ఉపగ్రహాన్ని ప్రయోగించాల్సిన పరిస్థితుల్లో మన సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ఉంది. 4 ఏళ్ల క్రితం మదనపల్లిలో 2 అత్యధిక విద్యావంతులు, ఒకరు ప్రొఫెసరు, ఇంకొకరు ఎంఎస్సి గోల్డ్ మెడలిస్ట్ తల్లిదండ్రులు, ఒక పెద్ద విద్యా సంస్థ నడుపుతున్న వాళ్ళు టీనేజ్లో ఉన్న అమ్మాయిలు 2 మళ్ళీ బ్రతుకుతారని చంపేస్తున్న సంఘటన మీలో ఎక్కువ మందికి తెలిసే ఉంటుంది. చెదురుమదురుగా ఎప్పటికీ నీ పిల్లల్ని బలిచ్చే పరిస్థితి చూస్తున్నాం. ఇంకా రోజు మనిషి పుట్టిన నుండి చనిపోయే వరకు జరిగే అనేక విషయాల్లో సైన్స్కి, సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్మెంట్కి సంబంధం లేకుండా మనం చేసే పనులు ప్రపంచంలోనే మనల్ని ఆ సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ర్యాంకింగ్లో వెనక్కి పెట్టే పరిస్థితి ఉంది. ఈ విషయాల మీద గత 37 ఏళ్ళుగా జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక లాంటి సంస్థలు కృషి చేస్తున్నా రాను ఈ అవసరం పెరుగుతోంది, నమ్మకాలు పెరుగుతున్నాయి, దానివల్ల వచ్చే నష్టాలు సమాజానికి పెరుగుతున్నాయి. మనం సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ఉంది, సైన్స్లో మనం ముందున్నాము అని చెప్పడానికి మన దేశ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు ప్రపంచవ్యాప్తంగా ఆవిష్కరణలో వేరే దేశాల్లో వేరే ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్లో పనిచేస్తున్నారు. ఎక్కువ మంది సంఖ్యలో కూడా మనం ఉన్నాం. కానీ నోబెల్ బహుమతి ఒక గీటరాయి అనుకుంటే సైన్స్లో మనకి స్వతంత్రం వచ్చాక ఒక్కటి కూడా రాలేదు. ఇక్కడ పుట్టి ఇక్కడ పెరిగి ఇక్కడ చేసే పరిస్థితి. దేశంలో మన కాళ్ళ మీద మనం నిలబడాలి అంటే ప్రధానంగా 2, ఒకటి వ్యవసాయంలో మనం స్వయం సమృద్ధి సాధించాలి, 2 సైంటిఫిక్ ఇన్వెన్షన్స్లో మన అవసరమైన వస్తువులన్నీ మనమే తయారు చేసుకోగలిగిన పరిస్థితి ఉండాలి. ఈ 2 విషయాల్లో రెండో దానిలో మనం ఎక్కడో ఉన్నాం, దిగుమతుల మీదే ఆధారపడాల్సిన పరిస్థితి. ఇది మన స్వావలంబనకు సీరియస్ నష్టం కలిగించే పరిస్థితి ఉంది. ఈ సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ పెరగకుండా చిన్నప్పటి నుండి ప్రజలందరూ ఆ రకంగా ఆలోచించకుండా, శాస్త్రవేత్తల్ని ప్రోత్సహించకుండా, శాస్త్ర పరిశోధనలకి ఎక్కువ ప్రాధాన్యత ఇచ్చి, నిధులు ఇచ్చి, శాస్త్రవేత్తలు బయట దేశాలకు వెళ్లకుండా మనకే ఉపయోగపడేలా చేయకుండా ఇది సాధ్యం కాదు. ఈ విషయంలో కూడా మనం జనాభిప్రాయాన్ని, పాలకుల అభిప్రాయాలని పెద్దగా మార్చాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంది. మిత్రులారా, వీటితో పాటు సైన్స్ జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక సైంటిఫిక్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్, సైన్స్ని ప్రమోట్ చేసే ఆర్గనైజేషన్. మీకు అందరికీ తెలుసు,
ఈ మధ్య సైన్స్ ఇన్వెన్షన్స్ గత 20 ఏళ్ళలో 30 ఏళ్ళలో జరిగిన ఇన్వెన్షన్స్, వాడుతున్న కొత్త పరికరాలు, మారుతున్న పరిస్థితులు, ఇవన్నీ కూడా కంప్యూటర్స్ కనుక్కోవడం తర్వాతను వేగవంతమయ్యాయి. జీవితాల్లో, జీవన శైలిలో తీవ్రమైన మార్పులు వచ్చాయి. ఇంకా ఇంకా చాలా మార్పులు వస్తున్నాయి. అందులో ఈ క్వాంటమ్ సైన్స్ అన్నది కూడా ఒక ముఖ్యమైనది. ఈ క్వాంటమ్ సైన్స్ గురించి మనలో ఎక్కువ మందికి లోతుపాతులు తెలియవు. ఈ మధ్య ప్రొఫెసర్ నాగేశ్వర్ గారు, ప్రొఫెసర్ రామచంద్రయ్య గారు ఒక వీడియో ఈ మధ్య వచ్చింది, కొంత ఇన్సైట్ ఇచ్చింది. జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదికగా ఒక సైంటిఫిక్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్గా దీని మీద ఒక సెమినార్ పెడితే బాగుంటుంది అనుకున్నాం. దీనికి ఎక్కువ మంది విద్యార్థులు, ఫ్యాకల్టీ వస్తే ఈ రాబోయే రోజుల్లో దేశ ప్రగతిని, ప్రపంచ ప్రగతిని, ప్రపంచంలో సీరియస్ మార్పుల్ని తీసుకురాగలిగే పొటెన్షియల్ ఉన్న ఈ సైన్స్ పట్ల మనకి కొంత అవగాహన కలుగుతుందని చెప్పేసి భావించి ఈ సెమినార్ ఏర్పాటు చేసాం. ప్రబీర్ పుర్ఖాయస్థ్ గురించి ఆల్రెడీ చెప్పారు. ఆయన ఇంజనీరు, సైంటిస్టు. మన VTBS అన్ని 3, 4, 5, 6 స్టేజెస్ని కమిషన్ చేయడంలో ఆయన రెగ్యులర్గా ఒక 5-6 ఏళ్ళు తరచుగా విజయవాడ వచ్చారు. మన ప్రాంతంతో పరిచయం ఉంది. అలాగే ప్రజల కోసం, ప్రజల దృష్టిలో పనిచేసే ఒక గొప్ప సైంటిస్ట్ ఆయన. అందుకోసం ఆయన ప్రజల కోసం పనిచేయడం అంటే ఇప్పుడు మనం చూస్తున్నాం, మన వ్యవస్థలో గతంలో కానీ ఇప్పట్లో కానీ పాలకులు పేరుకి ప్రజల కోసం పనిచేస్తున్నామన్న కొద్దిమంది ప్రయోజనాల కోసం పనిచేస్తున్నారని గమనించాం. ఆ పరిస్థితుల్లో ప్రజల కోసం సీరియస్గా పనిచేసే వ్యక్తులకి తీవ్రమైన నిర్బంధం ఎదురయ్యే పరిస్థితి ఉంది. అది గత ఎమర్జెన్సీలో ప్రబీర్ పుర్ఖాయస్థ్ గారు ఎదుర్కొన్నారు. ఇప్పుడు కూడా కోవిడ్ సమయంలో ప్రభుత్వ తీరుని ఎండగట్టడంలో న్యూస్ క్లిక్ ప్రబీర్ గారు ఎడిటర్గా ఉన్న వెబ్ సిరీస్ ప్రచార సాధనం ప్రభుత్వాన్ని ఇబ్బంది పెట్టడంతో ఆయన్ని ఇబ్బంది పెట్టారు, అరెస్ట్ చేశారు. ఏ ఆరోపణ లేకుండా ఆయన్ని పదే పదే ఆఫీస్ దీన్ని సోదా చేసి ఆయన పని చేయకుండా చేశారు. అయినా ఏ ఆధారం లేదు, అసలు ఏ నేరము లేదు కాబట్టి ఏ ఆధారం లేక చివరికి సుప్రీంకోర్టు ముట్టకాయలు వేసే పరిస్థితి తీసుకొచ్చారు. అలా ప్రజల కోసం కన్సిస్టెంట్గా, ప్రజల సమస్యల కోసం, ప్రజా అనుకూల పాలసీస్ కోసం సీరియస్గా పనిచేస్తున్న, ప్రచారం చేస్తున్న అతి కొద్ది మంది దేశ ప్రముఖుల్లో ప్రబీర్ పుర్ఖాయస్థ్ గారు ఒకరు. అలాంటి మంచి వ్యక్తి మనకి ఈరోజు ముఖ్య స్పీకర్గా రావడం మనందరికి మంచి అవకాశంగా భావిస్తూ ఈ సెమినార్ని మొదలు పెట్టవలసిందిగా ఐ రిక్వెస్ట్ Prabir Purkhayastha to start his delivery of the subject. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm going to stand and speak. It's more comfortable than sitting down. My apologies for speaking in English, not speaking in Telugu, which unfortunately I only know a few words, and some of them are not even good words. So therefore, I'll have to speak to you in a language which you will have to forgive me for not being able to communicate in what's your mother tongue. I've been given a difficult task because the minute you say something is quantum, then people, even those who know science, starts to black out. Because quantum states, quantum mechanics, all of these are difficult for us to understand. Why? Because in our normal world, we cannot perceive quantum states. So it's only when it comes to particle physics, which we cannot see or touch, it's only there. It appears to be a mathematical way of describing something that we cannot physically touch or feel or see. So the mathematics of it is rigorous. There is no vagueness about it. It has predictions. It has predictions in terms of probability, but those predictions are real predictions, and they show the nature of entanglement, which means particles can be entangled, and it seems they can even be in entangled states at distances which are astronomical. So this again, in our normal world, we do not understand how it happens, why it happens, and we can only say, yes, we know the laws of quantum mechanics. Yes, it follows laws. Those laws are not only real, we can see that if we have made certain predictions, those predictions will be fulfilled. All that we can see, but it does not mean that I can predict a particle what it is going to do. Now I'll leave this part of physics aside, because the reality is that if very famous physicists, scientists are not able to really explain things simply to us, then we have to assume that there are certain things in the microscopic world that we are talking about, which is something which we, with our five senses, we cannot grasp, but we can compute what is happening there. So we can tell you what the laws of quantum mechanics is. We can say what cannot happen. We can say the probability distribution of certain events, that if I take a sufficient number of examples, they'll follow a probability distribution which has been predicted. All that we can do. What cannot happen, we can say. But what is the likelihood of, say, a particle doing something is not something we can say. Unlike what we can say what a cricket ball will do, for instance. So this is where I'm going to stop and talk about what has been given to me, that why the sudden hype, particularly Andhra Pradesh, about quantum city, etc., etc. What is the basis for this? And I'll start by saying that we should not mistake marketing of a city, the capital of Andhra, for something which has a name, but the meaning of it for this purpose could be very different. Okay, you are talking about a possible future. You want to project that this city is going to be forward-looking. You want the world is moving towards technology, computers, increasing use of computation. We are talking of artificial intelligence, all of this. And you want to project this future with a good marketing name, calling it like Silicon Valley. You say now Quantum Valley. Now what it does, it makes people feel that you are looking forward to the future, and maybe there is a quantum revolution in computers which is going to take place, which will then open out jobs, open out the city for much more number of people to come in, increase the real estate price of the land here, and therefore a rosy picture, which cannot be done by only talking about a capital city. So this aura, the extra hype that you provide by calling it a quantum city, because Quantum Valley, because you can't call it Silicon Valley. That was done 50 years back. So you lost that opportunity. What do you do now? So these are some of the, I would say, the gimmicks that political figures, marketing figures play to market an idea, and in the guise of that, okay, give Andhra capital a certain visibility. So I have nothing against that, except that to believe that there is a quantum revolution around the corner, how true or not is that? And that's where I want to talk about that today. If we look at practically what we are seeing, is there are concept of qubits. As we know, a bit is either 0 or 1 in computers. Binary state, only 2 states. Either it is off or it is on. It's like a light bulb. It's either on or it is off. Not like a fan, which is a regulator. Okay? You either switch on a light or you switch it off. So, binary is 2 states, only 2 states. That is what the digital world really is. It works on a number of devices. At the moment, the millions of bits can be there in a computer. When we started, I still remember, we used to have what is a version of the IBM 360. It was actually a Russian computer which had copied the IBM 360. But at the time, IBM 360 was there in, for instance, in Kanpur IIT. It was one of the more advanced computers available at the university level. It was something which the IBM sold in very large numbers globally. So Russians had copied it, and in JNU there was also, this was available. As to also go to the Delhi IIT at that stage. I had come for my master's thesis work. This we are talking about a really long time back. Okay, this is 73, 74 period. And then there used to be also a computer sold by the British to Delhi IIT. That computer company died later. But these were the computers available. And you will be surprised that a cell phone 10 years back would be much more powerful than what those computers were. And those computers took a room which is as large as this, higher ceiling also, for a machine which, as I said, I can take a machine 100 times more powerful, probably even more, and put it in my pocket now. So that is the development that has come in digital technology. And for us who have gone through that, it's actually difficult when we think back that this is the pace at which computer technology would develop. Something that we had not even thought of. Yes, it would develop. Yes, computers will become bigger and bigger. Now, as somebody said, that the moon landing, the computers used for that is much less powerful than the cell phone you have in your pocket, which is true. So, if we talk about that, computers have come a very long way indeed. But the point is, the distance it has come is not that a qualitative change has taken place in the way computers work. It is simply that we have been able to use, instead of relays which are of this size, which had 2 states, we have been able to use essentially solid state devices which can then be, instead of this size, be very small sized in silicon crystals that you have, and therefore you have the possibility to encapsulate what you required earlier, large electrical devices. You can reduce them to electronics, and that is the miniaturization that takes place in computers. And as you know, now we are talking of how many micron level etchings can be, lithography can be done in order to lay out your chips. And obviously, the more finer lithography that you can do, you can etch thinner and thinner lines. You can make the chips much more dense by putting chips on it, things on it. So this whole way that you have reduced what used to be large computers to, with electronics, to now more and more dense packaging, as it were, that we have done, does not mean any advance fundamentally in the computation, nature of computations we were doing. The nature of computations remain the same, except now that we are able to pack far more computing power into those chips. We can program them in different ways. We can, out of the computation, we can do different things. But the nature of computation has not changed. And I think that's a very important element that we have to take into consideration. That when we're talking about quantum computers, what we are talking about is a use which we cannot understand how it will work. So therefore, the fundamental difference is, because we have no way of looking at what possible use of such computers can be, that we are also not able to predict, will the quantum computers change the world in a way that we have not thought of before. I will take Richard Feynman, who was the one who predicted, the first to predict. He was a very Nobel Prize winning physicist. He was also a maverick. He did various things. He also went and did archaeology for a little while, looking at Mayan, what are called codexes, which are Mayan. You see, Mayans had a written script. They had science, they had mathematics, they had astronomical calculations. And these were what would be called codexes, which are rolled parchment, essentially. Now, unfortunately, when the Spaniards reached Latin America, one of the first things they did was to destroy whatever existed as knowledge. Because they say, this is all evil knowledge. This is knowledge which is not Christian. So at that time, if you remember, there was also in Spain, in Rome, there was also large-scale expulsion, specifically in Spain, of Jews and Muslims from Spain. Again, arguing that they are corrupting. So this, and church was very much behind it. So various things happened. I will not go into that history. You can read it and see what happened under church at that point of time. So one of the attacks on the Mayan civilization was that this is not Christian. If it is not Christian, it's the work of the devil. So they burnt all the codexes, and till date, only 5 Mayan codexes survive. Of course, they're long rolled parchments, so they're not just one piece of paper. But we know from that, the Mayans had a concept of numbers. They had essentially replicated what we have done as Indian numeral system. They had a place value notation, unlike at that time, Europeans who used to write, if they had to write 20, they would write XX. Okay, they had to write 9, it would be X with what is line in front. If it was 11, it would be line after. So as you can understand, if you have to do a division, a long division, 3,596 by 7,325, say, then if you had to do it like this, using these numeral system, probably multiplication would be an M.Tech thesis today, and a division by a large number divided by a large number would get you a PhD, because that would take that long to do. Of course, they used abacus, really, for doing those calculations. They didn't do it on paper. But Mayans, as Indian literature also shows, that zero, the place value notation was there in India. And the zero is not writing zero. Zero is treating zero as a number. that you can add with it, you can subtract, you can multiply, you only can't divide by 0. That's the only operation we still can't do. That's banned, okay? But every other operation is possible. You can treat it 0 like as if it's another number. So the Mayans had also developed a concept of place value rotation. They had astronomy. They had advances well beyond, at that time, what Spanish science was. But they did not have steel. They did not have horses. Unfortunately, North America, there were no horses. They did not have animals which could be used for draft like donkeys or bulls. As a result, they could not militarily face, they didn't have gunpowder, of course. They could not face the Spaniards, and they were slaughtered. But the Mayan civilization, if you look at the architecture of the cities, if you look at the size of the cities, if you look at what they had created, probably at that time they were ahead, more ahead than Spain or Italy or Portuguese. And Spain and Portuguese are the one who are, being in the Iberian Peninsula, if you look at a map, that is closer to the Americas than any other part of Europe. So it's not surprising. Could you please put it on silent, the phone? So it is also not surprising, therefore, from European point of view, Spain and Portuguese are the one who first went to Americas. But the fact that Americas were isolated from the rest of the world meant that their civilization might have grown in one direction, but militarily it was not on par at the time with what Europe had. And Europe means Eurasia. It's not just Spain and Portugal. It meant from China, India, Persia, Arabia to Europe. So if you take that, then the destruction of the Mayan civilization meant that all those things were then lost. As an just historical note for you, only 5 Mayan codexes survived the burning that was done by the Spanish. They burnt all the other codexes. 5 survived somewhere, hidden somewhere, hidden by somebody who later on, 300 years later, it has been found. So Feynman is also one of the persons who could read Mayan codexes, because he had a partner with whom he went to also to see what is there in the Mayan civilization. And there he was, because he was a scientist, he was a mathematician, he was interested in these things, he could also decipher the maths in the Mayan codexes. Of course, others also did it, but he's also one of them. So he became, in fact, one of the experts on Mayan mathematics and science. So Feynman was also, as I said, he also got the Nobel Prize, but Feynman, again in quantum mechanics, Feynman also was the one who first said a quantum computer is possible. Then he was asked, okay, quantum computer is possible, you were saying, what will be the use of that? He said, to predict quantum states. So only thing that a quantum computer can do better than any other computer is not solving real life problems, but solving quantum problems. Now, that is unfortunately the state till today. That even now, though we are talking about quantum computers, qubits, being able to do A, B, C, but in any real life problem till date, quantum computers do not do anything which other computers, what we call classical computers, cannot do. So at the moment, there is no application of a quantum computer which shows that in this particular application, quantum computers is better than other computers. In fact, what is being done when a Google or somebody else builds a quantum computer, runs something, it's a specific problem created to show the quantum computer can solve this better than a classical computer. But what utility solving that problem has is not clear to anybody. So it again becomes like what Feynman had said, quantum computers are better at predicting the quantum nature of the states. So yes, that of course, we take it for granted that because their mathematics is ingrained in the quantum states system itself. But apart from that, there is really nothing that in the macro world, not the quantum world, in the macro world it does, which is superior to anything that the normal computers we have, which we use, that they can do. So that's one part of it. But as I said, to give a vision of the future, to predict, okay, we are going to do something, is good to lift the morale of the people. Particularly Andhra has a new capital. Therefore, do all of this, create a mirage that something is going to happen, and hopefully that some things will happen, whatever extent it is, and therefore he will be able to replicate some kind of computer developments in this place and help his capital state and the land value of the capital state. Let's not forget that, which is very important for all political persons. So that, I think, is in some simple sense is what happened. I also wanted to go back to Bejwada and what is my connection is Bejwada. Well, it's also about computers, because the first computer controlled power plant in the country is actually Vijayawada Stage 3. And we had Hitachi control systems over here, which are computer based to control the power plant. And this was the first implementation in a power plant of digital controls. It was also because N. Tata Rao, who was the chairman of the Andhra Pradesh State Electricity Board, he was actually completely a workaholic and also a visionary. He made various changes in the power plant designs in the country. Most of them were good, some of them were not so good. Always happens with somebody who is trying out new things. But there is no question, he was not only forward looking, but at that time, very few plants in the thermal power plants in the world had digital controls. People are not thinking about it. The only other digital control plant in India at the time was one of the refineries, if I'm not mistaken, which Engineers India Limited as the consultants had floated a specification, and the specification was poor, and they had at least started getting in the oil refineries the concept of digital controls coming in. Also nuclear power plants, digital controls were being thought of. The argument being there are complex plants, therefore, if we are able to back up the normal control system we have with some calculation, we may be able to optimize them better, be more efficient, do it at lower cost. So optimization is something our normal analog control systems cannot do. You need calculations for that. Therefore, digital computers might be useful. This was the argument which was coming in. And Tata Rao, I remember still, the first thing he said, I want single push button start of the whole power plant, complete automation. One button I press, the whole power plant should be able to start. Why can't we automate it? So that was our challenge, that we had to match Tata Rao's vision at the time, which virtually no plant in the world except a couple of them in Japan had done, and we were supposed to replicate it here. It's not a simple challenge, because we had to first write the specification. We are consultants, so we had to write the specification based on what is available in the world, and that also forced these companies to come and seek collaborators here. In fact, Hitachi had a collaboration with Keltron in Kerala. Keltron were the supplier, were bidding for this control system. Germany had a collaboration with Instrumentation Limited, Kota. So different companies had partnered with foreign companies to provide the technology, which was at that time still not available here. But it forced them into collaboration. And we insisted that the local party will bid, not the foreign party. So all of that meant that we also took, I'm using the word differently, a quantum leap in control system, not that we became quantum, but the control system changed dramatically. Because once you go for digital controls, then yes, a lot less size is involved. You don't need a lot of big relay-based system that you have. You also could put into it software to see the optimization is better. You could also see the startup is more smooth. There are a lot of things that you can do, which we didn't, all of that obviously we didn't do in the first plant. But I do remember that is something slowly came into nearly all the new plants that we were dealing with, that we could progressively improve what we had done in Vijayawada. Vijayawada was the first. It was in that sense the guinea pig. But that was Tata Rao's vision, that he could force us at that time. And forcing us is not a problem, but forcing a big vendor like Bharat Heavy Electricals, BHEL, but BHEL also made key systems that they had, also digital control based. And we worked very closely to do all of it. And I'm proud to say Vijayawada turned out to be one of the biggest successes that I have been associated with for a thermal power station. It became a model thermal power station. People came from all over the country to see, okay, here is a running example of a digital control system which works and which works well. And the client is happy with it, the supplier is happy, and I as consultant, of course, did get some credit for that as well. So I'm not unhappy about it, obviously. So that was my long past association with Vijayawada Thermal Power Station. Thank you. Most people know me for my being in jail during emergency and now in being in jail now. So they don't really know that I've had an engineering past as well. And I still am interested in my engineering. But at 78, I don't think I should be engineering anymore. So the fact that I moved into, just taking a quantum leap here, to move into journalism, so to say, after spending almost 40 years of my life in basically optimization, control system, all of these things. Why did I move into this? Because I felt that as society is changing, we are also changing in a way that we are not appreciating, particularly when you talk about movements, struggles, that we have to face up to the fact that the communication world, how people communicate with each other and how centers of power or movements, struggles, have to communicate with the people, this is changing. And it is changing primarily the same way that control systems changed 30, 35 years back because of technology. And what was the technology? The technology was the cell phone. That once you move to the cell phone, you are seeing that from merely being a recipient of communication, which is really in some sense completely centralized in the hands of a few media companies. Earlier newspapers, later television. This communication is entirely few to multitude, many. Few companies control communication. They tell you what is news. Originally, every morning, newspapers used to tell us what is news. After television came in, 9 o'clock news started telling us what is news for the next day. So newspapers then had to follow what television had set as the agenda. So I'm discounting radio because radio never in India became that popular because All India Radio people thought was government. And Mrs. Gandhi's emergency did not really varnish the All India Radio's stature. It became an instrument of propaganda and remained for a long time that. But what happened was that with private television, multiple voices coming in, television started setting the agenda for the future. It's also the time when Those who have worked the whole day come, have their dinner, 9 o'clock, they have the time to see what's happening in the world. And you are a passive absorber of news. You don't think of news as being something that you are involved with. You think of news as what is being given to you. So in that sense, both newspapers, television, both have this form of communication which is one to many. They are telling you what the news is. And that set the agenda next day also for the newspapers. What changes with the cell phone is now you have a chance also to mobilize opinion in a very different way. Now, there are two possibilities here. You create opinion for a purpose, as an adjunct, as a complement of your struggle. You're involved in the struggle. You want to get that news. You want to say why people in your city, in your state, in your village should be involved with that. What is the benefit to them? That's something you can do also. Or you can do it for self-gratification. I, the great, tell you as common people what I feel about this subject. You know, I am the new voice of God. I am the new whatever avatar. I am the Swami, and I can tell you everything in the world. So there are two modes of communication. One for self, just to praise yourself, how great I am, and the other as a compliment for movement. That means you look at the people's needs and you say, how can they be mobilized for what is right? How can I give that to them? How can I give it as an instrument of struggle? I was in Andhra a few months back. When I was speaking, I was talking about, say, Lenin. When he creates the Iskra, he doesn't create it just for as a newspaper because he wants to give bhashan to the people and write. He gave it as an instrument of struggle. How the party, the movement, the revolutionary movement in Russia, later Soviet Union, could be built around Iskra. Not in writing it alone, but in distributing it, printing it, reprinting it in different places. How could this be done? So it was an organizer of struggle. It is an organizer of resistance. So you can look upon this little phone, doesn't cost that much now, as an instrument of struggle or an instrument of self-glorification. So one is completely self-centered. Unfortunately, number of people with this instrument get carried away. They think that they pontificate what they sit in the rooms and do. If they pontificate to the phone, that the world will listen. It doesn't happen that way. Then you are only speaking to yourself. So how those who do not have the power to buy television stations, buy newspaper organization, speak what the government wants to hear, so it automatically gets amplified. What can we do? Our strength lies in the fact that we are many, that we are in large numbers. We speak for the people. We organize the people. The question is, how can we use this instrument today for that purpose? And here I have to say that we have to stop thinking of this as an instrument for me and think about how we as movements can use communication for organizing the people. Now, when it comes to the press, and I'm going to end with the how do I look at the press, I feel that the part of the press that I empathize with, where I think I belong, is that which is able to take the voice of the movements to other people. Report on movements. Why am I saying that? In Delhi, for example, when we have, say, workers' strike or the farmers come to Delhi, what is the next day's headline? Traffic jam in Delhi, as if all their readers are people sitting in cars and they've got stuck in a traffic jam because the workers are protesting for their livelihood. Not the fact the workers, the farmers, the peasants, agricultural workers have marched from 300 kilometers, 500 kilometers, come by train, come by bus. They're congregating here. Why? Why are they wasting their dihadi, their daily wages? Not one day, but much more than that. Why are they doing this if they do not have an existential problem which they want to place before the people of India? So instead of that, what are they catering to? To the middle class, who feels uncomfortable sitting in his car. My God, I've got stuck in this traffic jam for 2 hours for this workers. So this is the difference, that when people come, do you portray what they are saying? Do you portray their voices in the media? Or do you take the viewpoint of your Malik, the owner of the newspaper, who hates all these movements and therefore would like to give the picture these movements are bad for the country? So what is the role that we should play? And this is where I was thinking when I started NewsClick in 2009. My attempt was, can we do this simply? Small number of people. And I wanted only to set this as an example to my media friends, those who are trying to experiment on this, to see whether they would take up these ideas and replicate it, and I would offer them any amount of help they required for that. But over a period of time, yes, NewsClick became somewhat more known. People started looking for it. There was some support available. So instead of my being only an example, I had to become also a journalist, which late in my life, I didn't really want. But it was a role in some sense forced upon me by the circumstance that we started it. And as it grew, therefore, I had to do also what is required. Yes, I'm very proud of the fact that we did cover the farmers' protests which took place at that time in a big way. We started covering it when it started. I still remember in Rajasthan, in one town. Then when the farmers started the protest in Maharashtra and they marched up to Bombay, we started covering it from day one. It's only much later it came into the front page of every newspaper. But all of this we started right in the beginning. I'm very happy that we could do it. And I think NewsClick has done therefore something which had a role it has played, which whether it is not able to survive, it is shut down by the government as it is at the moment almost, that is not relevant. What is relevant is that we could run a news organization in a different way and showed that this could be done. And it's also true that if people get together in Andhra, in Telangana, we have a proud history of people's movements. If you today want to build people's media, it's possible. If you want to think of how struggles can also merge with that kind of media, how can we do it? I think this is our challenge. To think that social media is only self-glorification, or listening to the Prime Minister, or listening to a few people who they are now calling influencers. You know, now every Tom, Dick and Harry wants to be an influencer, or as in the capitalist terminology, said we are building our brand. I don't know what it means. You know. So, but that is the, shall I say, when you have nothing else to do and you have no competence, then you want to build your brand. So that's where it seems to be at the moment. It can become an instrument of self-glorification and really getting narcissistic, only navel-gazing, or it could become an instrument of struggle and mass communication. I think this is where at the moment we are. We are at a cusp of history, which not in quantum computers, but in terms of communication, we are at a cusp of history. where it's no longer possible to muzzle the voice of the people. It's no longer possible to decide what the news is by either a set of capitalists or by the governments, to sit with them and decide what news should go and what news should not go in the public realm. This is no longer possible. But it also depends on us whether we want to take up the challenge and what possibilities exist today, and is it possible for us to create a communication in which those who are activists, those who are in movements, those who are fighting for their rights also are able to organize their voice in a way that it reaches others. And can you do it with solidarity for each other's movements so that we build a different kind of media to contest, not to replace? We can't contest with the dominant view which is being projected by capital and, of course, by the government today, who is in the interest of capital. I will conclude by saying this is not a new challenge. This is a challenge which we undertake when you turn activist, when you join the left, when we say we want a different kind of society. The only difference today is that the new instrument for the struggle is also available to almost all of us today. And how we use it will determine the struggle for our consciousness, which to me is as important as any physical struggle that we do. Therefore, I'll end with this. Yes, whether quantum computing will change the future, I do not know. But at the moment, what we have in terms of the number of people we have, the kind of technology that is available to all of us, we have the ability, by working together, to make a quantum change in society. Thank you very much.
థ్యాంక్ యూ ప్రవీత్జీ. ప్రధానంగా క్వాంటమ్ సైన్స్ ఎక్కువ మందికి అర్థమై ఉండదు, నాకు కూడా తెలియదు. ప్రబీర్ గారిని ఆ పేరు వినే మనం ఎక్కువ మంది వచ్చాం. అర్థమవుతుంది ఏంటంటే జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదికకి ఈ సైంటిఫిక్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్ ఉన్న వాళ్ళు ఎక్కువ మంది అవసరం. ఢిల్లీ సైన్స్ ఫోరం లాంటివి అందులో ఫస్ట్ ఉన్నాయి. అంటే మీ కంప్యూటర్ సైన్స్ స్టూడెంట్స్, లెక్చరర్స్ జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక రావాలని కోరుకుంటున్నాను. మొదటి. రెండవది, నార్ల తాతారావు గారి గురించి చెప్పారు. ప్రపంచంలోనే అరుదుగా ఉన్న విజ్ఞానాన్ని ఇక్కడ థర్మల్ పవర్ స్టేషన్లో ఇక్కడ పెట్టాలని చెప్పేసి ఆయన అనుకున్నారు. దాన్ని ఇంప్లిమెంట్ చేయడానికి ప్రబీర్ గారు టీము ఆయన లీడర్షిప్లో వచ్చింది. అది ఆయన టెక్నికల్ నోహౌ ఆ స్థాయి. అయితే ఇన్నాళ్ళు ఇంజనీర్గా చేసి జర్నలిజంలోకి వచ్చారు. మనం ప్రధానంగా 4 అంగాలు ప్రభుత్వానికి, దేశానికి ఉన్నాయనుకుంటే అందులో మొదటి 3 సరిగా పనిచేయకపోతే 4వదైన మీడియా కానీ లేదా జర్నలిస్టులు కానీ సరి చేయాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంటుంది. ఆ అవసరాన్ని దృష్టిలో పెట్టుకొని ఈ జర్నలిజంలోకి వచ్చారు. మనం చెగువేరాని గుర్తు చేసుకుంటే ఆయన డాక్టర్, కానీ ఒక దేశ భవిష్యత్తుని మార్చడంలో కాస్ట్రోతో కలిసి పనిచేసి ప్రధానమైన వృత్తి, అందులో ఎంత నిపుణుడైనా సామాజిక కార్యకర్తగా, నాయకుడిగా దేశ భవిష్యత్తును మార్చారు. ఈ జర్నలిజం ఇప్పుడు మనం చూస్తే మన దేశ ప్రధాని చాలా బలమైన ప్రధాని. మన ఈ 11 ఏళ్లలో ఆయన వెనక్కి తగ్గింది ఏదైనా ఉంటే రైతుల పోరాటంలో తాత్కాలికంగా ఆ 3 చట్టాలని వెనక్కి తీసుకున్నాడు. దాని వెనక కృషి, త్యాగం, 700 పై చిలుకు రైతులు ప్రాణత్యాగం చేసి సంవత్సరం పైగా నిరంతరం కన్సిస్టెంట్గా అన్ని కష్టాలని ఎదుర్కొని పోరాడితే వచ్చింది. దాన్ని కవర్ చేయడంలో డే 1 నుండి న్యూస్ క్లిక్ ప్రబీర్ గారు ముందున్నారు. ఈ తాజ్మహల్ కట్టడానికి రాళ్ళెత్తిన కూలీలు ఎవరు కట్టారంటే షాజహాన్ చెప్తాం, కానీ కూలీలు ఎవరు అన్నది ఆ యాంగిల్లో చూడడం అన్నది మనలాంటి వాళ్ళకి చాలా అవసరం. కాబట్టి జర్నలిజం, మీడియా, దాని ప్రాధాన్యత ఈరోజు మ్యాక్సిమం మీడియా హౌస్లన్నీ పాలకులకు అనుకూలంగా, పెట్టుబడిదారులకు అనుకూలంగా, లేకపోతే వాళ్ళ హస్తాల్లో ఉన్నాయి. ఏదో మైనర్ పోర్షన్ మాత్రమే ఉంది. దాన్ని దృష్టిలో పెట్టుకొని అందులో పనిచేస్తున్న వాళ్ళు ఆ స్వతంత్రత నిలబెట్టుకోవడానికి నిష్పక్షపాతంగా, విమర్శనాత్మకంగా చేయడానికి చేసే కృషి, ధైర్యం, కమిట్మెంటు చాలా చాలా అవసరం. అలాంటి దానిలో ప్రబీర్ గారు ముందున్నారు. ఆయనకి మరొకసారి మనందరి తరఫున ధన్యవాదాలు. మీలో ఎవరికైనా ఈ క్వాంటమ్ సైన్స్ గురించి కానీ, లేకపోతే అదర్ దాన్ ఆయన జర్నలిజంకి సంబంధించిన ప్రశ్నలు ఏమైనా ఉన్నా దయచేసి మీరు కొద్దిసేపు అవకాశం ఉంది. ముందుగా లక్ష్మణ్ రెడ్డి గారు, జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక ఫౌండర్ నాయకుల్లో ఒకరు, మొట్టమొదటి ప్రధాన కార్యదర్శి, జన చైతన్య వేదిక నడుపుతున్నారు ఇప్పుడు. ఆయన వచ్చి బ్రీఫ్గా మాట్లాడాల్సిందిగా రిక్వెస్ట్ చేస్తున్నాం. తర్వాత ఎవరైనా ఉంటే మీ పేర్లు ఇవ్వండి. తక్కువ సమయమే ఉంటుంది కాబట్టి ముందుగా వచ్చిన వాళ్ళకి అవకాశం ఉంటుంది.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. జన విజ్ఞాన వేదిక 1988 ఫిబ్రవరి 28న విజయవాడ నగరంలో తుమ్మలపల్లి కలెక్టరేట్లో ప్రారంభమైంది. మొదటి జనరల్ సెక్రటరీగా పనిచేశాను. ఆనాటి మా అనుభవాలు ముఖ్యంగా అక్షరాస్యత ఉద్యమంలో ఒక దశాబ్దం పాటు 23 జిల్లాల్లో పెద్ద కృషి చేశాం. 17% అక్షరాస్యత పెరిగింది ఆ డికేడ్లో, 91 నుంచి 2001 మధ్య. కానీ దురదృష్టం ఏంటంటే అప్పుడు 17% అక్షరాస్యత పెరిగిన ఈరోజు ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ అక్షరాస్యతలో 36వ స్థానంలో ఉన్నాం. మొత్తం 28 రాష్ట్రాలు, 8 కేంద్రపాలిత ప్రాంతాలు ఉంటే ఆ 36లో మనం 36వ స్థానంలో ఉన్నాం. ఈ విషయం మన ముఖ్యమంత్రి కానీ, మన ప్రభుత్వ వర్గాలు కానీ ఎక్కడా చెప్పం. క్వాంటమ్ వాలీ అంటారు, ఏఐ అంటారు, ప్రతి ఇంటికి ఒక పారిశ్రామికవేత్త అంటారు, రకరకాలుగా ప్రజల్ని పెద్ద ఎత్తున మభ్యపెడుతున్న పరిస్థితి. అట్నే ఇప్పుడు అమరావతిని మార్కెట్ చేసుకోవడానికి అమరావతిలో క్వాంటమ్ వాలీ వస్తుందని. ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్లో ప్రతి ముగ్గురులో ఒకరు నిరక్షరాస్యులు. ఈ పరిస్థితి భారతదేశంలో ఏ రాష్ట్రంలో లేదు. కానీ పెద్ద పెద్ద మాటలతో ప్రజల్ని మభ్యపెడుతున్న పరిస్థితి. పెద్దలు ప్రబీర్ గారు చెప్పినట్టుగా సోషల్ మీడియాని మనం ఎక్కువ ఉపయోగించుకోవాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంది. ఎందుకంటే ప్రింట్ అండ్ ఎలక్ట్రానిక్ మీడియా అంతా దాదాపు 90% కొద్దిమంది చేతుల్లో, ఆదాని అంబానీ చేతుల్లోకి వెళ్ళిపోయింది. కానీ మన చేతిలో ఒక మంచి అస్త్రం ఉంది, సెల్ ఫోన్ ఉంది. ఉద్యమాల్ని, సమస్యల్ని, పరిష్కార మార్గాల్ని చూపించే ఆయుధం మన చేతిలో ఉంది. దాన్ని ఎక్కువ ఉపయోగించుకుందాం, ముందుకెళ్దామని తెలియజేస్తూ సెలవు తీసుకుంటాం.
లక్ష్మణ్ రెడ్డి గారికి ధన్యవాదాలు. క్వశ్చన్స్ అండ్ ఆన్సర్స్ ఉన్న వాళ్ళు దయచేసి త్వరగా వస్తే మీ అక్కడ నుండేనా కొంచెం వీలైతే ముందుకేనండి. ఈ ప్రబీర్ గారి తాలూకా ప్రెజెన్స్ని మనం పూర్తిగా ఉపయోగించుకున్నాం.
When all the media was under control of the capitalist and directly and indirectly also, how can media can justify to the society?
Come again, sorry.
How can media can justify to the society and people when it was under control of the capitalist directly? Of course, Reliance and companies are acquired all, including NDTV also. So, in this circumstances, how can justify the media to take the people by us?
You know,
ఒకసారి అక్కడ ఆన్ చేయండి. నో ఇట్స్ ఆన్.
song. Shravan,
ఓకే
the question is always, what is the legitimacy of the media? And if the media goes to an extent, it is seen to be what is called speaking not truth to power, but power to truth. If it starts telling the people what the government wants it to say, after a certain point, its circulation will not be there. People will not take it seriously. The sale of paper will not be there. And then, of course, being a capitalist, his money doesn't come from the news, it comes from the advertisements. So, what is the ultimate instrument people have is not buying the paper, not reading it. And if that happens, then media is in trouble. So always the media has to balance the fact that it needs readership. And readers are not stupid. We may believe, those who are journalists may believe that readers can be fooled. Yes, some for some time, not all for all the time. So it is also true that during emergency, since I always have to go back to that, how many people believed 75 to 77? It's really 19, 20 months. How many people believed the media? Very few. And it is also true that where atrocities took place, particularly where Sanjay Gandhi was powerful and he went really whole hog on family planning, as you know, the people gave an answer. It didn't appear like that, by the way. I was released just before the elections, and other political party leaders were also being released just a couple of weeks or a month after I was released. And there was a very serious discussion. What's the point of participating in this election? Mrs. Gandhi will win. They did not believe that the propaganda that was there in the papers every day was actually not working. It's only when they came out and they held a few meetings, they could see how the temper of the people was rising and how the public opinion, which was already there, but which was not expressing itself, was now coming out to express itself. And that was a very striking reminder to all of us that people, as I said, can be fooled, some for some time, not some for all the time, and not all the people for some of the time. So this is the reason that there is what intellectuals have called about public space. The public space that is created, that has a certain degree of autonomy from those who control media and the government, which exercises power on the people and the media. And that is exhibited in the way they talk to each other, they talk in their homes, they talk in the tea shops. You can't stop that. And that communication, which is maybe in whispers, but as the people get more and more unhappy, then that has the ability to turn the table, turn the fulcrum in a direction that you have not anticipated. Otherwise, social change would not happen, because it's always true that levers our power is with the state, and the rich and powerful control the state. Yet revolutions happen, yet social upsurge takes place, yet governments change. So all of that means that the public space is also where we all participate in different ways. And that public space can be bent but it cannot be bent completely out of shape. And it has the ability to resist in different ways. That is why I'm saying, how do we build resistance against big capital, against the violation of civil liberties that is taking place, against the divisions in our society, against trying to make each other fight? How can we do it? And what is our instrument? Our instrument is, an instrument can amplify. Of course, I talked about the phone, but our instrument is really our mind. Our instrument is our tongue. Our instrument is a sense of humor we can bring, ridicule the powers that exist who think too much of themselves. Our organization, ability to bring others with us, and the public space that has been created is not something the powerful like, but it is there. Today, mass communication, mass struggles, history of this, the British couldn't stop it. They had the British Indian Army, which obeyed their commands, okay? But they still had to go. And they had to go because once the naval mutiny took place in Bombay, they knew their days were numbered. The Indian Army would not listen to their commands. So I think that is the stage which even most powerful empires have fallen. The question is, therefore, we should not think of the people and ourselves as passive actors who are only acted upon. We have to think ourselves as also active creators of history. And as I said, I have lived through emergency. I'm an optimist that yes, divisions can stop us for some time. Hatred can win for a certain period. But love of the people for each other, solidarity, and our sense of humor, and our intelligence, collective intelligence, will defeat the rich and the powerful. That's my belief, and I have always felt vindicated by what has happened.
That is quantum science. That is quantum science.
Okay. Well, as I said, to make people think that a new revolution is possible, like Silicon Valley, like computers, is a good hope to keep in front of the people. Nothing wrong with it. By the time it has died out, something new will happen. He might lose the election, some new chief minister will come. So, giving hope, as long as it's not completely fraud, I'm not against. But if you ask me, is this hope going to be realized in 5 years? Answer is no. Will it be realized after 20 years? In technology, I can't predict beyond 5 or 10 years. So yes, something new may or may not happen. Something else might happen. We don't know. All I'm saying is to give people hope is good. But in this case, the hope may lead to ultimately real estate prices going up in Amaravati. But beyond that, what will happen, I'm not so sure.
One way or not? One way or not?
Hello. Yeah, hi, Mr. Prabir. Good evening. So good to see you.
Sound.
Can am I audible?
Yeah, speak loudly.
Okay, sure. So I'm happy to see people that are interested in the quantum physics that are around me in Vijayawada, and I'm happy to see you. For the association with the Vijayawada, and my name is Koti. I'm a software engineer, and my question to you is like there are always two things in the physics: theoretical physics and the practical physics, right? So theory, you can do a lot of things with the theory, but in the practical, you can only sustain in a way according to the limitations of the physics we knew. So my question to you comes maybe not in under the values of the governance, but on the quantum science. How exactly you think with the limitation of the chips and everything we have at the moment? I knew like the question is we don't know. Like how exactly we think where we are going, and maybe like the quantum science with ICQ in the Canada and the IBM and Google already are their way. Do you think it is feasible in India? And you, the answer you have given is for the real estate prices. That is the question. That is the answer I always give to my colleagues and the people around me. Do you see with the 186th place for our supercomputer in the world is exactly feasible? Maybe can we get the quantum science into India? That is my question. Thank you.
You know, I do not believe there is something called practical physics. I believe there is engineering. Because what we do in engineering technology, we create artifacts, we create instruments which carry out certain functionalities. The functionalities come from our needs, they don't come from physics. Physics, in most cases, are constraints, what you can't do. You will not fly if you jump out of the window, you will fall to the ground. The theory of gravitation. But theory of gravitation doesn't build you an aircraft. Okay, you don't even have to know much of aerodynamics to think about flying. Leonardo da Vinci actually did fairly nice work on this, you can see. So a lot of this is our imagination, and in our imagination we build what we think might work. And when it doesn't work, then you look at what is the physics required to make it work. Okay, and actually the great advance of physics takes place when there is a social need for various artifacts that drives science. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details of this, but in Knowledge as Commons, I've written about it. So please do read my book. I'm trying to sell my book also. Okay, but the point is that I've dealt with this, what's the relationship between science and technology. So because we have quantum mechanics, we don't want to invent problems it can solve. The question is, what is the kind of problem a quantum computer would solve, is the question that we have to ask ourselves. And the answer is, there is nothing at the moment a quantum computer will solve which my other computers will not solve. And will it solve more efficiently? At the moment, yes. There are what are called, since you know the subject, what are called NP hard problems. All NP hard problems are hard. That is why the name. So I'm not going into details for others, but those class of problems are solved by using heuristics. That means we do some mechanism by which we run a number of trials, we improve the trials and see where we are going, and hopefully we get into a good place. And then we try other alternatives to say whether there is any other better place. Say, okay, we have solved it. We know it's not the final solution. It's not the best possible solution, but given the nature of the problem, which means they expand exponentially with the alternatives you have, and therefore it's difficult computationally to handle them, this is the best we can do. There, I will not go into this simulated annealing being one of them, which is the one they're competing against in most of the quantum computing examples you get. So all of them, we have other ways of solving the problem. And we haven't found a problem which quantum computer will be better at solving right now. Maybe it will someday, but then someday, okay, we'll see it at that time. So at the moment, what quantum computer is best at is simulating quantum mechanics. Okay, the Feynman answer, which he gave 40 years or 30 years back. Okay, that's where we are. So given that, I do not see it leading to economic change, which is what we are talking about when you talk about technology. Therefore, I'm saying yes to spark the interest of people, very good. Get them involved in this, very good. Give them hope, very good. Build your capital city, very good. But will it lead to a major change in the economic scenario of Andhra or Amravati? Answer is no. Will it bring bright people there? Yes. If some bright people gather there, something will happen, But it will not be in the field of quantum computing right now, unless we have done something which we have not been able to do in mathematics as yet. That's where I'm saying, and there is somebody called, I think, Scott Aronson, who writes something called Chattel Optimized or something. He's a very well-known author of this. He's very clear. He's a lot of videos on YouTube. You can read them. I've been following him for 4, 5, 6 years now. So you read them. So I would believe what he says because he says it very clearly. And therefore you can read, you can hear him and say, okay, this is where we are. And yes, if things change, sure. Major advance if it takes place in our understanding of nature, sure. Understanding of mathematics, sure. At the moment, no. Yeah, thanks.
Prabir, I'm really poor in quantum mechanics, quantum computing, quantum mathematics, and I understood again that I'm really poor at it. I didn't understand anything about the quantum physics today except fine answer of the Feynman, which you reiterated and which I really love it. And then you have an engineer in you and an activist. I love the second part of it. And I have been associated with AIPSN for quite some time, and I know your work in Delhi Science Park. Amit Sengupta, Sunaraman, yourself, you are doing wonderful work there. And you touched upon the very important aspect of quantum leaps. You spoke about the Iskra of Lenin. Then, as you have two facets, engineer and activist, the crowd also is a mixture of engineering and activist crowd here. And the engineering crowd has left immediately after you spoke. And now we are only the activist crowd. So I'll come to the question. What would Lenin have done now? He came up with Iskra during the Tsarist time. At the time of social media, at the time of mobile phone, at the time of Instagrams and Snapchats, what would have Lenin done to propagate revolution?
I think first he could have said, thank God I am not here at this moment. I think the question is to us, what should we do now? So I don't think we can pass the buck to Lenin. Okay. I would say the problems are different, but the nature of the struggle is same. So that is always will be true as long as you have capitalism, as long as you have feudal remnants in your society. And it's not only feudal remnants, let's not forget that while we have had caste in this country, thousands of years of history, of exclusions, social, economic, every sense of the term. But globally, there is something else that we have not registered, that we have also had a history, starting with 1492, Columbus reaching the Americas, of genocide. Massacres which took place in the Americas, which the world, or at least the European powers, the colonial and settler colonial powers, United States, Canada, Australia, being settler colonial powers, would like to forget that their wealth, their power was derived from massacres of the indigenous population of the Americas. Today we know that there are 18 million people, indigenous people who are there in North America, excluding Mexico, America meaning United States and Canada. 18 million people were there and they had settled agriculture. We know that now. And yet they were massacred. Not massacred once, repeated massacres. So this history of the world by which West becomes the dominant force is based on genocide, based on slavery. Let's not forget, slaves taken to plantation economy, sugar, the first global commodity, and after that textiles, which is the base of the Industrial Revolution in England. And don't also forget that they had to levy 9 times the duty of the value of cotton cloth that they were importing from India to be able to stop Indian textile imports into Europe and England, because England controlled that trade by that time. 9 times, without which, as Marx wrote, the mills of Lancashire would not have moved if this did not happen. And these are all available, but they're not available, meaning they're not known to even us activists. So the power of Europe, European colonialism, and the United States, Canada, and Australia as extension of that, that has ruled the world now for about 400 to 500 years. And the current crisis that we see is the crisis of not simply of the G7, as it is called, the what is it? The new global order, the rule-based international order, but it is also now the closing period of this 400 to 500 years of rule, 400 years, really 450 years of rule of colonial and central colonial powers over the world, what is called the G7 right now. And I think that is a huge change that is going to take place in the world. What role we will play, what role India will play, an open question. What role we can play, question for us. But I think the world is changing. It's not just that Trump is destroying the American hegemony over the world, which he is, but it is also true that what's happening in Gaza today is destroying the claim that the West made that they represent civilization. What's happening right in front of them? They are giving it arms, they're giving it money, they are trying to stop all protests in their countries against this. Not that we are doing much better here, we know that, so we're not going to talk about it since I already have so many cases against me. So, but nevertheless, this is a change in the world which is very important to register. So I think I'm always very optimistic when I think of the future, that yes, things will change. The only problem we have is there are nuclear weapons in this world, and therefore it is possible that a dominant hegemon, dominant power, when it goes down, it will decide to take the world along with it. That's a risk that is always there the day we had the Hiroshima bomb. We knew from that day, new age has come in which this risk now stays with us. Not much, not very optimistic, but not completely pessimistic either.
Thank you, Prabir. Time ఎక్కువ లేనందున subject related questions ఉంటే
Good evening, sir. Actually, this is, I understand this is a combination of quantum science, government, and media. Most part is regarding that in our discussions. But before going to the outcome or usefulness of the quantum computers to the all people or public, we should think one more thing, that is, who will work for that? Who will work for that quantum computers here? Okay, at least some people should work for that. Here, if we go to the colleges, even a single science student doesn't know what is quantum mechanics, and each electronic student or everyone doesn't know the Moore's law. So who will work for the quantum computers? So we should not think that this is only for government related issues or real estate issues. We can perceive this as the science students something like not skill issues, knowledge, or they have to work for it, they have to protest for it. As we do even not know the quantum, what is quantum mechanics or what is what, how can we go for quantum computers here? First we have to start from the students who will be working for the supercomputers here. I want to initiate that point too, sir.
Well, fundamentally, what do you do with an education system which does not teach the students what is science, what is quantum mechanics, if they don't learn in the classroom? there is no way we can teach it. So either you have to be somebody who's cussed enough to learn by themselves, which happens. Nobody taught Einstein theory of relativity. So yes, it happens. And it is possible to do much more learning today than we could when we were students. Okay? So in that sense, the possibility of groups, individuals learning today on their own, even without teachers, is possible to think of. Okay? So how do you keep the spark alive? It's a challenge to all of you. We kept the spark alive not because of classrooms. You know, I didn't like classrooms much. I preferred to read on my own and give exams, and I did reasonably well. Not too well, but reasonably well. I didn't like sitting in class too much. So there are crazy people like me who are not very good as students, being classroom participants. But some are very bright students today, and they will learn in spite of their teachers or with their teachers. You find one or two good teachers, it really sparks your mind. You know, it really makes you think of different things. So I'm going to say, believe in the people. Believe that yes, no amount of bad institutions, bad teachers can take away your spark. It is not the spark that we are talking about, Lenin's Iskra spark, but our spark, our ability to think for ourselves and our ability to think new things.
Sir, here actually is, I am not talking about individual students. Actually, here the education system. I am actually talking about the educational system here. That's what. Sir.
That is what the students have to organize to get a better education system, and the teachers have to organize to ask for better, better facilities, better library, better instruments, better laboratory, and not just better buildings. Okay. Governments love to have better buildings because there is money in that. Okay. But for having better teachers, a better library, not money. So that is the problem. But that is where the movement comes in. The combined power of students and teachers, if it is exerted for these ends, then yes, I think you can change certain things for sure. At least if nothing else, you can get a better library, better instruments in the labs. But you have to fight. Nothing comes free.
Good evening. Thank you for your informative lecture to say what is the state of quantum at current position. And we all very well know that some state always puts us in a quantum state. And lectures like you tells what current state is, or else all our mind will be in that state. So as one of our friends said, here there are no engineers. No, I contradict with that. Now I want to kindle your engineering mind over a journalist. So you are seeing recent developments in AI, and which is vandalizing literally the feeble voices which we have. It's infesting like anything. So out of your experience and with your engineering mind, I want you to envision, so what all critical steps we can put forth in the near future so that we can aim ourselves towards an activist engineer kind of thing. So whether we should take technology towards people, or from your near recent experience, if you throw some light, it will be very helpful for us.
Well, there is no one answer to this question, honestly, because I think various alternatives exist and all of them should be tried to see which works better, because you are facing a new scenario. Forget about quantum, what you were saying. Already, AI has overtaken all of us. It's not that it didn't exist earlier, but we are not aware of it. We always did Google search. We didn't know how Google was searching. What did Google do in order to give us answers? What kind of answers Google gave and what answers it didn't give. And now we have AI. And what has happened increasingly, you don't see the original sites. You only see AI's summary in Google. So slowly, even what we could get through Google is slowly also disappearing. So we have to see how to, ourselves see what we can do. But what I would argue is that just as when machines came, the craftsmen, the textile craftsmen, they were completely against the hand loom, the loom itself, which was at that time not mechanized. Then water wheel came in, it became automated. So they fought against it. This is what the Luddite movement was. The point is that you can't really stop if productivity increases significantly in a certain technology, you will not be able to stop it. The question is, what is the social control you can do? What are the alternatives you have? You have to explore within that. So when you talk about AI today, reality is that yes, if you want to find something quickly, you want to get a quick summary of things, of course, if you use AI, that is there, much easier. But if you think that that is where everything ends, then you are in trouble. But then 90% of the people get their truth from newspapers, isn't it? 90% of the people get their truth from whatever they have been told. But it's a 10%, 5% that really matters because they change society. So in all of this, I will say that we will have to see how these instruments develop and how to use them. And in that sense, it is also true there are platforms which are emerging, open source. One of the biggest things is now platforms like DeepSeek have been completely open sourced. There are also other platforms which are being open sourced. And it is therefore possible to run your instance of it if you get together. Of course, cost is the computer, and that's going to be costly. But you can hire time. Now, a lot of this is where any technology change takes place. This is going to be the challenge we'll face. And my argument is the challenge may seem different, but in some sense, it's common to what new technology has always posed in front of us. And therefore, the question is not whether it is good, bad, what is it we can do in a negative sense, but what is it that we can do is, I think, to be taken in the positive sense. And I do believe that AI gives possibilities today also of getting a quick summary of things that you wanted to know. Not that you take it for granted what is said there is correct, but okay, these are the things, let me think about it and see where I want to go further. So I also use it regularly. It's not that I don't. And it's just that I don't believe in it, in the sense whatever I read is not necessarily correct. So I check the facts, what are the alternate possibilities, what else is being said. So I think this is one of the technologies which is going to be there. It is also true that generative AI, what is being called the large language models, when somebody says they hallucinate, it's not true. It's not the question they hallucinate or they don't hallucinate. The point is their only mechanism is to extrapolate from what they have seen to make a set of guesses. And therefore, that's what they've been configured to do. It's not that something which is they are doing outside the bound of what is correct. That's exactly the way they have been engineered, that you have all this data available, see the patterns and give the answer which is closest to a pattern you have seen. That's necessarily what a large language model really does. And therefore, somebody has said, we should talk about hallucinating. It's really extrapolating from what data it has. And therefore, that's exactly the nature of a large language model. And it is what neural network does. That neural network is essentially an extrapolation. So given, except that, unlike mathematical linear extrapolation, it can do nonlinear extrapolation also. But that's about it. So given all of that, I don't think we should think that we are in a situation. We cannot afford, let me put it this way, we cannot afford to reject all of this. We have to engage with it and see how it can be used for our purpose. Just as they want to use it for their purpose of extraction of more money, oppression of people, keeping the current capitalist system in place, for favoring Tatas, Birlas, Ambanis, Adanis, and so on. We have to see how can we make this work for the people, and what are the instruments which can work for that, critically to show quickly with data that this is what we want to say, but of course cross-check the data. That of course you have to do. But ask for sources, ask for links to what is the data that you provided, from where have you got it, cross-check that it is true. So all of this is something that we have to do. We can't escape it. Just like you couldn't escape Google 10, 15, 20 years back, no?
థ్యాంక్స్ ప్రవీణ్. ఇంకేమైనా క్వశ్చన్స్ ఉన్నాయా?
సార్ ఇందాక అడిగారు కదా, ఒకసారి ఇచ్చి. ఫ్రెండ్స్, కొంచెం టాపిక్ చాలా కష్టమైంది, అందరికీ అర్థమయ్యేది కాదు, కాబట్టి ఆ ఇబ్బంది అవుతుంది. కానీ మనం ఆ టాపిక్ గురించి తెలుసుకోవాల్సింది ఉంది అని మన అవగాహన కోసం ప్రబీర్ గారితో కాసేపు గడపడం కోసం ఇది ఉపయోగపడుతుందని అనుకుంటున్నాను. ఇంకెవరు ప్రశ్నలు లేవనుకుంటే క్లోజ్ చేద్దాం. ప్రబీర్ గారికి మనతో పాటు 2 hours పైగా ఉన్నందుకు ఆయనకి ఢిల్లీ నుండి వచ్చారు. రేపు కూడా గుంటూరులో ఒక ప్రజాశక్తి ప్రోగ్రాం ఉంది, దానికి కూడా ఎవరైనా వీలైన వాళ్ళు అటెండ్ అయితే సంతోషం. వెరీ మచ్ థ్యాంక్స్ టు Prabir ji on behalf of Janavignana Vedika and all the audience who came here. Thanks a lot for spending a valuable time with us. అలాగే ఇక్కడికి వచ్చిన మీ అందరికీ, అలాగే వెళ్ళిపోయారు కొంతమంది, వాళ్ళందరికీ కూడా ఈ సెమినార్కి వచ్చి ఓపికగా సార్ చెప్పిందంతా విని కొంత అర్థం చేసుకొని అండ్ మనం ఏ విధంగా పనిచేయాలి, దేనికోసం పనిచేయాలి అన్నది కొంతమైనా అర్థమై ఉంటుంది అనుకుంటున్నాను. ఆ రకంగా ముఖ్యంగా కాలేజ్ స్టూడెంట్స్, స్వేచ్ఛ నుండి వచ్చిన వాళ్ళు, మిగతా యాక్టివిస్టులు అందరికీ జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక రాష్ట్ర కమిటీ తరఫున ధన్యవాదాలు. అలాగే ఎంవికే మేనేజ్మెంట్ ఈ హాలు, మిగతా సౌకర్యాలు ప్రొవైడ్ చేసినందుకు, జర్నలిస్టులు, ఫోటోగ్రాఫర్స్ అందరికీ కూడా జనవిజ్ఞాన వేదిక రాష్ట్ర కమిటీ తరఫున ధన్యవాదాలు తెలియజేస్తూ ఈ సమావేశం ఇంతటితో ముగిసిందని తెలియజేస్తాను.